Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Yard Sign Special Edition, only because it's Wednesday, really. There's nothing else much special about it. Coming to you live from Bullhorn Communications, the Bullhorn Bunker. Thanks to our buddy Travis Horn. We actually also need to talk about one of the things he's working on. I don't know if you guys have heard the state bird. They're trying to change the state bird, and so that's something he's working on. We need to have him on to talk about that. But there was just so much to cover in terms of what's happening in politics, not only locally, but nationally, that we absolutely had to do a show this week. Plus, we have a very special guest joining us today, and it's going to get hot. I mean, not as hot as the other conversation that was happening just before the show, but
I don't know what you're talking
about. But let's go ahead and do a rundown of topics. Okay, thank you again to everybody for watching. So we're going to kick off with the school board mask mandate. Not only a national topic, but even still a local topic, despite the governor's executive orders and legislation that's been passed. Also, Nikki freed for Florida governor. There's a rumor that she might be jumping in the race, making that race a little more interesting. We'll tell you why coming up. Also, Tampa's cancel culture. We got a city councilman, friend of the show, actually, who is under fire. And we'll explain why now the very people who voted him in are trying to get rid of him. And last but not least, what the HREC. And if you're wondering what the HREC stands for, that's the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee. We'll talk some local politics about what's happening here in Hillsborough County as we come to you live from Tampa, Florida. This is the Yard Sign. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the audio version of our podcast, and you can do that at the Tech Overlords at Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. Woo! Always get those in. And again, if you're watching now on YouTube, Facebook, make sure you like, comment, and share this episode so we can continue to reach more people. Thank you so much in advance for doing so. Now, over to the big table. Let's go ahead and start from left to right. Our very special guest joining us for the first time, April Schiff. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, God, it's been too long. It's taken too long for us to get you on the show. You're an incredibly well-respected consultant, political consultant. You have a long history with Republican politics here in the Tampa Bay area. We're obviously going to touch on a number of things that are certainly going to tap into that experience of yours. And now you're kind of you took a break for a while, and now you're kind of back into the full thrust of politics, taking on some candidates and stuff. And so how's 2022 looking for you?
It's looking great. We're excited. I think 2022 is going to be a great year for Republicans. Opportunity exists everywhere.
There we go. All right. Love the energy joining us, and maybe a little grumpy after a little pre-show spat with the gentleman on the far end, Joe Wicker. What's up, buddy?
Nothing much, man. Inflation is real. I'm just trying to convince this guy. Inflation's real. He just doesn't care about us.
I think we could do probably
poor people.
We could do 60. We could probably do at least 60 minutes on just inflation.
Yeah. Well, Anibal's he's high society, so he's the elite. So he doesn't care about us poor folks.
That's right.
Joe Wicker, I love when your R starts.
He brunches. He's one of these guys who brunches.
First of all, brunch is a real brunch.
He brunches.
With mimosas.
Brunch is a real
strawberry
thing.
Mimosas.
Well, it's a real thing for some people.
Brunch is a real thing.
For certain quality of people.
I know that you guys are never able to find a parking spot at Oxford Exchange when there's brunch, but
exactly.
You had the mango mimosas.
Yeah. When they talk about the
pink
Republican elites, this is who we're talking about here.
Well, if you would just pay your fair share,
oh my
you
God.
could get the valet spot in front of the store.
Please tell me what my fair share is. I will pay it now and get it over with.
Well, we'll talk about deflation come the summertime.
Yeah, my God. All right, over there on the far end, feeling feisty today. Now that tax season is behind us, is Anibal, David Cabrera.
Yes, I am excited to be here. It's great.
Shockingly.
It's great. Yeah, I am. I love how everyone forgets.
I can't believe you wanted to do a show on tax day.
Well, it was to get me out of the office.
That's true. I don't blame you there.
Oh.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump back into today's topics. Again, first, we're going to kick off with the Hillsborough County school mask mandate. We've already seen a lot of fallout here locally when it's comes to issues surrounding coronavirus. Anibal has made a very good case for the fact that some of the incumbent school board members that did not win re-election were because they went against the will of the parents when they were talking about when and how to reopen schools. Now, of course, there was a huge, 3-hour meeting at the school board talking about whether or not and to what extent masks are going to be continue to be required at our public schools come next school year. And so nothing really came of the meeting, but where do things stand right now, Anibal?
I believe they're going to there's going to be another hearing coming up to discuss what they feel is going to be the most pressing issue. Right now, a lot of parents and parents, teachers, and kids are really having the conversation of, are masks going to be required for summer school and for summer activities? And if you have been in Florida for more than 1 year, you realize that wearing a mask during summer is almost wearing more than one layer of clothing is almost impossible in Florida outside. So I think that's going to be the main argument at the moment, and we'll see what the board wants to do. But I think this is another situation where parents are going to remember all of the drama that they were dealt with during this cycle and the frustration that they received because of it, and we're going to see what the fallout of that is going to be.
Well, and so let's go ahead and bring in our special guest, April Schiff, here into this topic. I've got a little one. She's 5 years old. She's been having to wear a mask, but luckily they had a scare. But aside from that, they had no incidents at her school, fortunately. It's a Montessori school. And we're seeing, of course, again, follow the science, right? Trust the science. Kids have been less susceptible to contracting the coronavirus. And if anything, my concern is, because right now there seems to be a rash of some type of respiratory issue going around. My daughter's had it. A few of the other kids in my family have had it. I'm wondering if you're breathing this bacteria, your own bacteria, repeatedly throughout the day, for hours on end. And I'm wondering if the masks are really exacerbating or creating other problems.
I think, first off, how do you keep a mask on a 5-year-old kid for 8 hours a day is just pretty a challenge to begin with. Right. We know that kids are less susceptible. We also know that their incidence of serious illness from this COVID is much, much less than older people. Vaccines are available 12 years old and up now in Florida. And so it really doesn't make sense if you're not following the science. You have to follow the science, and it doesn't make sense to have kids in masks all day long. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, especially, again, if you're outdoors, the sun's hitting you, there's fresh air. I think they're going to look in retrospect and realize that all these lockdowns and keeping people indoors for hours and days and weeks on end was really exacerbating the problem, because we're seeing that happen in the states that are still under lockdown. Right. Ontario has had their third spike, right, and they continue to be on a heavy police-mandated lockdown. And I think, again, you would think that they would realize that, okay, maybe this lockdown thing isn't working, but they seem to just wanting to go back to that method.
Well, but it causes so many other problems, both financial, mental, social. People are not made to isolate and be alone in their homes, and it just creates so many other problems, plus the economic issues of closing down businesses and people having the inability to get groceries, and it makes life very, very difficult. It makes no sense.
Joe, you work in the healthcare industry. You work with a lot of people who are high risk, for COVID. And how have they managed with the mask and now the non-mask? What are some of the things you're hearing from the? Yeah,
well, we've been really fortunate. I mean, the seniors that we work with, they're all pretty much vaccinated at this point if they're going to get it. We've had very little infection at all. And I would give credit to the caregivers that work with us, and they take standard precautions, which people should do when you're working with a vulnerable population. But we're in a healthcare setting; that's a completely different scenario. Yeah. What I think we're seeing now is that the science is coming out and showing that the virus was airborne, and that it was airborne even more so than we thought, and that 6 feet isn't even enough. And so really, and that the masks, whether you're in a state or a county with a mask mandate or no mandate, lockdowns or no lockdowns, it didn't seem to make a difference. So, hindsight's always 20/20, but I think a lot of people were very skeptical in the very beginning. And I think most people at this table were, and we were kind of shunned a little bit. It was the unpopular position to take. I mean,
Sure.
Governor DeSantis was a leader in it because he was out front, and he was one of the first to start questioning the efficacy of complete lockdowns.
Right.
And so, I'm thankful that he didn't support that, and I think it shows now, because when you look at states like California that were total lockdown and states like Florida that never really completely locked down, you see that the infection rates weren't really impacted by those types of policies. So,
I mean, I can't wait to see, hopefully someone will write a book, if not the governor himself, to really to pick apart what the decision-making process was.
Yeah,
because
sure.
we saw up until the point where he started repealing the lockdowns, we saw he was very hands-off. He was like, let the local governments decide what's best for them, which is, again, a very kind of conservative way of governing.
Yep.
Let them decide what's best for them, because, Tampa Bay is not Miami, and Miami is not Ocala, right? That sort of thing. And then once he started to realize that, hey, we're not getting all of the information, or maybe we're not getting the right information, you see him almost change entirely and really take the lead and start to take the reins on this whole issue. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, as we've said on this show before, nobody else is being held accountable for the COVID numbers, the case numbers, the death numbers. Only the governor is,
well,
right?
here's
So why
one
not
of the
take
things-
why not take leadership of the issue and
here's
drive
one
it?
of the things about that. I think government's default position is to usually do something that's like a control measure, or hey, if we do this and it doesn't matter, then so what? At least we did something. Like, government always wants to do something.
Right.
And I think the governor did sit back and let local governments, handle things at first. But then as the science and the data started rolling in, I think it was good to have somebody like Governor DeSantis, who's a thoughtful guy, and looked at the science and realized there was no science backing up a lot of what the local governments were doing.
Yeah.
And thankfully has done what he can do within his power, which is to prevent too many onerous, regulations.
So, Anibal, you had said, I'm sorry, Anibal, you had said that, the decision as to when and how to open the schools really cost some elections for those that were on the school board. Do you think that there's going to be maybe a similar outcome with this issue, or still surrounding basically how they've handled COVID until now?
I want to say that the run-up to the 2020 elections, there was a very finite time of what occurred. And the teachers and students and parents know what happened last August and July in regards to they were unwilling to allow for schools to even reopen. That was not a part of the plan. You had the Department of Education for Florida having to come in and say, we need a plan from every single county, and if you couldn't come up with a plan, then we were going to force it upon you. And so at the end of the day, when the school board at that time decided to push it back by 2 weeks, having kids back inside schools, you saw the uproar of parents really get upset. And teachers get upset as well, because that's a huge planning time and getting things in order. The first, I think it is 60 days, is having to deal with attendance and money and people holding their jobs at school. So it's a very uneasy time for the school system and for the school board to make the decision to not allow the kids or the teachers to come into the classrooms. Those first 2 weeks, I really believe it took out 2 or 3, I think probably 3 city school board members that weren't even able to go through the primary, weren't able to win the primaries. So you saw the effect right then. This time around, it's going to be a year before it really shakes out. I don't know how angry parents will be, but after 3 hours of commentary, which I have not seen in a very long time, it be that crazy with parents, teachers, and students commenting and getting up there and having to, and this isn't even just in Hillsborough County. This fight is everywhere. There was a school board in Virginia that got shut down because of the amount of people that wanted to comment. School boards in Texas and in California were completely wiped out when they had special elections a month ago. So the ripple effect of the school system is having being felt across the country.
Here's where the school board messed up. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the bigger problem the school board has going into the 2022 elections is their financial status
Yes.
in Hillsborough
Oh,
County,
yeah.
because
That's gonna
they are
keep
in
it
deep
going.
trouble. And
Yeah.
if there's anything to pay for at the ballot box, it's going to be their financial issues
Yeah.
that they have,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
going to overtake anything else that they've done with COVID.
What the school board screws up with, and what this is just how government behaves, right? Is when they shut down, those employees that didn't have to report to work, and I'm not saying that the teachers didn't work
Correct.
or whatever. I know there was some online stuff, but those employees primarily at the main building, admin building, that didn't have to show up for work, that didn't impact their lives like it did all of the parents of those children. When you kept the kids home from school and you're an administrator, okay, you're an administrator. You're at home collecting your checks, still getting paid, guaranteed government pay. Meanwhile, the parents, 1, 2, however many people in the household, the children being home is impacting their work.
Correct.
So for the government employee, a lockdown doesn't affect them financially like it does a civilian employee who now has to leave work, take time off, adjust their hours, work with their employer. And there's some jobs out there that you just can't do from home.
Right.
And that negatively impacted parents. And so I think a lot of parents were willing to see what was going on with this, kind of take the hits, make some adjustments with your life. But once we realize that kids do really, really well with this type of virus and don't really get sick, or you don't even know they're sick with it, parents are like, hey, we got to let the kids go to
Yeah.
school
Yeah.
because otherwise we're all going to go bankrupt.
And we saw this in
You
the
know?
beginning of the virus because, and a lot of people don't know this, YMCAs were still open for kids of first responders and those that were in the front line.
Yeah,
So they
didn't
were able to get
They didn't lock down?
and they never locked down. And
Well,
so
they had to have childcare for
Exactly.
the first responders that
Yeah.
were and the healthcare workers that were out
Oh,
there.
and they're doing the child
So
care.
they had child care centers all over the place that were taking care of these kids,
okay.
and they didn't have a problem. So
Yeah.
why would the schools have a problem?
And so that gave the first inkling of, okay, children are not getting this. They're able to still be together. They're not passing it around. And so you had that first, like a live test subject situation because these were still open when the majority of schools were closed at that time. So the fact that we're still having to fight this fight, like what? I don't understand.
The biggest
Government
COVID
employees just don't
problem,
wanna
the
go to work.
biggest problem with
That's not
COVID
true.
was the misinformation and the construed information that
Yeah,
people got.
yeah.
Correct.
People became distrusting because the messages that they got were mixed. It's like, well, if you're sitting down or if it's 9 p.m., you're okay. But we have to shut the bars down at 9 p.m. because at 9:01 the COVID becomes more lethal or something. None of it had any logic to it. It wasn't based on science. It was based on edicts put out by people that wanted to express their power or something.
It was
made
control.
no
It
sense.
was
It was
trying to
all
control
control.
behavior. It was
Totally
trying to
control.
control behavior.
And that's what happened. And it was wrong. And people are rebelling against that stuff.
And also, when you do so much of that, and then you do it for a certain period of time, and when the doomsday scenario doesn't really occur, at some point in time, the correct information that the government does put out is getting missed because there's so much of people blowing it off because they're like, I can't take this anymore. Right. If the government's going to continue changing its mind, if nothing's making sense, then they just stop listening. And I
Right.
think a lot of people said, forget the CDC. I even know clinicians that used to rely on the CDC. I mean, that was the standard.
That was standard.
Right.
That was the gold standard. When the CDC came out and said, this is the protocol for this, all clinicians, the hospitals, everybody, that was it. That was the that was going to be that was the gospel,
Right.
And they went off of it. You have clinicians, you have doctors, nurses of every different types of medical professional now questioning the authority of the CDC and how valid this information is.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous
Well,
in the long run.
To me, one of the biggest red flags in all of this actually came out from an article in the New York Times recently, which, again, as conservatives, we always, want to kind of take a pause
about Dr. Fauci?
No, actually, the fact that they said that there has been zero cases. There have been 0 cases attributed to someone contracting the coronavirus outdoors. All right. So again, where was the safest place for everybody to be? Outdoors.
Why did we close all the
Yeah,
parks?
and they were saying
Oh, my-
they were,
New York
and
City.
but initially,
We closed
So
all the parks.
annoying.
We closed all the parks and told people to stay in their houses.
Yeah, stay at home, save lives was not true.
correct.
Stay at home
yeah.
got people killed.
Yeah, and there was
Because-
they claimed that there was a 10% chance, or they were saying originally that there was about a 10% of the cases were being contracted outdoors. Now it came to be known that they were just completely flubbing that number
Yeah,
because they didn't
they
have
didn't
enough
know.
data
They
at the
didn't know.
time, and now they've come to have to admit that less than, I mean, literally zero. I mean, 0 cases have been attributed to someone contracting the virus outdoors.
Well, I
and
remember
so
New York City had a study that showed that something like 76% of all of their infections were confirmed to have been contracted indoors. Well, hello, you shut everybody down
Right.
and put sick people in rooms with everybody else. And I understand family units, but like I said probably a year ago, what would your grandmother have told you? Your grandmother, okay, who lived through polio, lived through, all these other things prior to vaccines, would have said, go outside, get some sun, get some fresh air.
Right.
And that's how you can kind of, and yeah, stay away from people in general, but go outside. Don't be all cooped up inside. I mean, this has been, like grandma wisdom for a long time. Like, don't stay cooped
well,
up
God's,
inside.
and we come to now, everybody's talking about God's disinfectant, right? The sun.
Yeah.
You go out there, and again, now because we've also now come to learn that it also didn't have the lifespan on surfaces that they
Right.
originally
Right.
claimed.
Right.
And so all of this over cleaning of everything,
Yeah.
really, I mean, the funniest
Whole
thing to me
safety
was
theater, yeah.
I went to Busch Gardens Mother's Day, just like a week ago, and they're still going through and spraying down the rides before,
Oh my
in between, in between people, in between groups, thinking that they're doing something, when in reality, these are outdoor roller coasters that are not only traveling at a high rate of speed.
Yeah, the UV light
but-
is probably destroying you.
Unless they're in the
See that there is a bottle of apple juice.
Oh my God, look at that
And
frame.
because it's a prop. I don't know if people understand that it's a problem. It's a problem. No, it's but no one can hear me, so I'm gonna say it's not. Get the whiteboard and carry on,
I think
guys.
it's hilarious that Travis just has like his laundry.
Okay, move it
sitting
back to
there.
me. You put it to Johnny.
It's like I went to law school.
Okay, guys, can you hear me?
All right.
Oh, we're back. Well,
Thank you to everybody in the comments section for letting us know about the audio issue. I think we got it resolved.
and that's
so-
how we solve the Middle East peace process.
That's right.
Back to you, Johnny.
You know, the last thing I want to say about the mask mandates and all the government actions in regards to COVID is that I wish one of the lessons learned would be that it's okay to not always have the answers. And I understand
Right.
that
Right.
people are clamoring for information. And as leaders, you want to communicate and sometimes over-communicate. But it's okay to say, we don't know.
Correct.
Right.
And the CDC and Fauci and all of them, the media keeps asking you questions, and it's like these guys just can't help themselves but provide an answer.
Right.
And when they don't have an answer, they just go overboard and say, well, 2 masks, 3 masks. I mean, this is foolishness.
They're just making stuff up.
They're
You
just
can't make
making
stuff
it up.
up. It's really, really okay for
Yeah.
anybody in any position to say, I don't know the
It's
answer.
okay.
We're working on it. We will
Yeah.
figure it out, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, no
Exactly.
matter what the question
And
is.
people
I
can
don't know.
People can respect that. People can respect it if a government official said, you know what, we believe it's airborne. We're not sure how bad it is. So please, like, wear a mask for
Yeah.
right now until we figure this out.
Well, the worst
Like,
part is
there's
that
nothing
now
wrong with that.
Fauci is looking like he's flip-flopped on every
On
angle
everything.
of
Well,
this.
he has.
Yeah.
He
Well,
has.
right, because
I mean,
he's had
he
to.
actually did.
Right, but
No,
instead
no,
of
because
instead of right,
chose
exactly.
to.
So,
Remember-
yeah.
remember-
Instead of saying I don't know, let's hold on, let's get the information.
was not an option
Remember,
for him.
remember,
That was
it
not an option
It
for
was
him.
on the news. These people were talking like serious people, and it went on for about a month, where they were presenting the concept of, well, 1 mask is like 50%, and 2 masks is 75, and if you wear 3, it's like 95. And legit, I mean, these people were actually doing this, wearing 2 and 3 masks, looking like idiots, you know. And so you got common everyday people watching the news saying, what? Like, what?
You're going to wear 3
Like,
masks? How do
so-
you even breathe with
so
3
I'm
masks
wearing
on?
3. So
They
first it was
barely can
1,
breathe
now
with 1
2.
mask.
Now I got to be at 3 now. Like, common people are just like, okay, this is getting crazy.
It got
You
to
know?
a point
And they
that it
knew
was
that.
just absolutely
It
ridiculous.
didn't make any sense, and it wasn't really backed up by science. Just say you don't know.
Sure.
No.
People can handle
So Laura from the comment section says that we need to normalize "we don't know" as a phrase,
Sure,
so people
absolutely.
get comfortable understanding that. Because I would give the benefit of that, especially for something that we don't know, like a virus that's
Yeah.
sweeping the world. I'll
Right.
give you 15 days. I'll give you a 2-week lockdown so we can figure out what the heck is going on. Throw a few billion at it and let's figure it
Obviously,
out. But for Fauci to lie, and now for the Washington
did
Post,
lie, and they
for
did
the
lie.
Washington Post to be coming up with articles talking about how the organization that he was working with that funded the Wuhan virus
Right.
is now starting to break. And people are like, well, we didn't want to talk about it because Trump was in the office. And Trump was saying it's the Wuhan virus. Well, because you don't like Trump, you're not going to go for the science.
Oh, that's exactly what they were doing.
There's
Yeah.
no
yeah,
Right.
And
No
so
question.
that is starting to break down when you're saying,
Well, Rand Paul's
Listen.
on that. Listen to
Oh
what
no,
Rand-
there will be.
Rand Paul's
when
legit.
people,
Rand Paul is on this.
the American public are
Yeah.
not going to accept the fact that politics controlled something that was killing people.
Yep.
Okay,
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
wrong,
Yep.
and they won't accept it. And it's going to be there will be repercussions from that.
Not only that, as devastating as the deaths were, right? Because it was, monumental, right? But let's also talk about the global devastation economically that this has had on people around the world. The businesses that will never come back, the people who've lost their jobs, lost their homes, because we still haven't seen the end of this.
No.
The moratorium on evictions
Rent
is,
and
yeah.
foreclosures and rent
Yeah.
is not done yet. And when that happens, I fear that we will see a whole new class of homeless people in this country because
If-
they
if-
can't make up the backlog. It's not possible because they haven't had jobs and they haven't been making money.
If this
so
would have happened 50
it's going to be a
years ago,
tragedy.
If this would have happened 50 years ago, this country would have went to war. Like if this would have happened in the 1950s or 1960s,
They probably would have attacked China,
This,
yeah.
this country, people probably would have, declared war.
I could have seen that.
it's-
I could have seen that.
It's because it was obvious where it came from. And here's the thing, and I know we don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but people forget this isn't the first time
is
that
not
a
the
virus
first
has
time.
come out of China.
Correct.
Right.
I don't care whether you blame
Correct.
their viral research the virology, clinics or whatever they've got, research institutes. I don't care if you blame them or if you blame their poor hygiene or their lack of sewers in these markets, outdoor markets. I don't care what you blame it on. The fact is that countries like China have a problem, and they keep exporting their problems.
Yeah.
And when it gets out of their borders, they don't care because it's beneficial to them, because they don't care if millions of their people die. They can care less.
Right.
It's a benefit, actually.
They view that as a benefit.
Yeah.
Sure. They already have population issues.
Yeah, and so they're allowing things to destroy world economy, countries' economies, and they're not paying a price for it.
Oh,
Right.
they're paying a price for it, and they will be paying a price as
Man.
more and more countries around China start to close their borders.
I hope so,
for
but-
it. But I will say this: I don't know why it's an issue, but can we please have a larger conversation about why one country has a huge problem when it comes to bats having their way with pigs? I don't know what's causing it, but that is definitely having an issue.
Well, Rand Paul's
with these
on that,
things.
and he's right now. Rand Paul's talking about the Wuhan Institute of Virology or whatever it's called, doing research on taking
There's a particular word, yeah.
viruses that are only transmissible between animals and boosting them up to where they can infect human beings. And I don't understand why they're researching that, but it's
No,
but I don't
we've
understand
done-
there's a reason
but if
why.
you are researching that needs to stay in that lab.
Yeah.
If you know.
Maybe not. Maybe it's intentional.
Well,
Get out.
but we
No,
need to
but
have.
if you-
We've done congressional inquiries. We've
Yeah.
done congressional investigations on far less.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, and so yeah,
we did
it's
a
like
congressional inquiry on steroids in baseball.
right, exactly.
Yeah, but that's a really important thing, though.
and that's what we
can't
need
do
to
it.
have happen, and it needs to start now.
Every Latino person was very concerned about
They-
steroids in baseball.
Oh
Let's
my
all
God.
get real serious here.
All right, well, we went down that
And now
tangent,
Jose
but
Canseco's a disaster. Look what happened to the
that's
guy.
right.
Can we, por favor.
Oh my God! All right, so someone who's been incredibly critical about Governor Ron DeSantis and all of this, of course, because it is pretty much her job, is Nikki Fried, the current agriculture commissioner here in Florida, who
Whose picture
is
is
currently.
no longer on the gas pumps.
That's right. You know,
yeah.
well, you know what's funny is I always thought that she kind of looked like the Joker. I mean, she has that
Well,
huge
on all the
smile.
gas pumps,
So-
she does have a weird
Let's-
smile. But on the gas pumps, people were drawing like
They were getting very creative.
the sharp mustaches and the.
First time I saw it, I thought she was just a clever realtor who was like
Yeah,
marketing,
it does
you know,
look like
kind of
that,
like
yeah.
doing like a new marketing approach. All
It
right.
does look like a realtor's
Listen,
business card.
in the political world, it was a smart move.
It was a very
really
smart
smart
move.
move.
I'll give her credit
And
for
she
that. Yeah,
tried
it
to make
was
it
good.
happen, and they shut
Yeah,
her down.
yeah, it
Unfortunately,
was a
but
good move.
Wait.
She should have waited for a re-election year,
Wait.
you know.
That was live. When I unplugged it, now we're on. When I unplugged the USB-C, you now have audio.
Yeah, but it's on. It's on. Is it the laptop audio or is it ATEM audio?
He's saying they're saying it's on.
Sound the way it before? Sound clear?
It's
Go back,
background.
right, so do this, go back to, no, on Nemo. On Nemo, go to no device and then back to blackout. Because it does have a reset it.
the coffee.
Joe, how's the McCafe?
Now we're good?
It smells good.
All right.
Can you stop advertising? Jeez.
All right, so we were talking about Nikki Fried, who, again, very cleverly had her face plastered all over the gas pumps when she first took office. Again, a move that I think she should have saved for year 4, because that would have,
Hindsight, that would have been smart.
Well, she would have gotten away with it, I think, long enough to maybe help her win
yeah.
either re-election or whatever she's going to do next.
Yeah, but kudos to her. If she'd had her face on every gas pump in the state of Florida for 4 years, it certainly would have helped any re-election chances, or for at least getting her ID out there pretty heavily. So,
But she had to know that wasn't going to last long. I mean, it was clever, but I'm pretty sure she.
it was certainly worth a try. I think
she
it was
succeeded.
clever of her.
No, I
She did.
respected that she did it. I was like, that's a
Absolutely.
good move.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
It
I'm
was
okay
a
with
good
that.
move. It got her
Good
face
move.
out there. Yeah.
But that just means that everyone else is going to be trying to do
She got
something
free
similar to that.
advertisement for a year.
Yeah, no, all right. And so she's been incredibly critical of the governor and his handling of coronavirus, because she is the only statewide elected Democrat, that's in an executive office. And so the speculation is that she might go and primary what is going to be, now Congressman Christ, making a run for the governorship again. And so, do we see Democrats favor an actual Democrat, or do we see them sell out once again for a shot at the governor's mansion?
That's going to be a fun race to watch, because Charlie is what he is. Then he's moved all over the spectrum on the political parties, but he's a great politician.
I think it's kind of refreshing to see that happening. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it comes out. I think it's just interesting.
Lost audio again? Oh, okay. All right. So I'm sorry. Go ahead and recap, because we did lose a lot of what you were saying there, but you made great points about the race.
No, I'm saying I think it's going to be a great matchup, because Charlie is an obviously tried and true, excellent retail politician, but she is bright, young, presentable, viable, and I think that the Democrats will embrace her, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think she has a good opportunity.
I mean, I think she's aggressive enough and competitive enough to take Charlie to task on his party swapping and the fact that he's been loyal really to no one other than Charlie Crist, right?
Has he ever termed out of office anywhere? It's always jump into the next opportunity. That's been Charlie. And I mean, I've known Charlie since he was the education commissioner, when he was elected education commissioner, and sometime before that. And he just keeps moving to the best opportunity that's in front of him. And I'm not sure people are going to keep accepting that and keep pushing him forward. And I think that she has a really good opportunity.
Now, do you think the move comes as a result of maybe him just not liking D.C., not wanting to be in D.C.? Did he get spooked maybe by the last election, Anna Paulina Luna, and him having a lot of challengers? Or is this just Charlie being Charlie?
Opportunistic. He likes being in Tallahassee. He likes being the governor. And I think that he, for some reason, thinks that this is an opportunity. But it doesn't really matter who comes out of the Democratic primary, because DeSantis will win the election anyway.
He's one of.
He's going to win re-election because he's one of the best governors we've seen in a long time. He's strong. He's taken care of the state better than any other state in the country through this COVID issue. And I think he's well respected across the board. So,
because it's not like Charlie hasn't done well in D.C. He's done well. Doesn't really have, I would say, a lot of positions of note.
But he's 435. And
no,
just,
you're right. But
like
he
that.
is one of the top fundraisers. I believe he's one of the top 5 fundraisers for the Democratic Party in D.C.
He doesn't like me. I can understand it, though. I mean, if you've been governor and you're in a position of leadership to make make a big difference, really. I mean, you're a big part of everything that's going on, because your signature is required for legislation. I mean, it's a big deal. I can totally see why someone like Charlie going to Congress, he's kind of sitting around like, all right, what are we going to do this week? Trying to get something done, but you got 435 people. I mean.
I tell candidates that same thing all the time. Look at the job. Look at the job, because make sure you have a job you want to do. And I think he likes being governor a heck of a lot more than he likes being one of a number of congressmen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, what do you really do as a congressman? You don't get to set the agenda.
Right.
You know,
Well,
you
for a
don't.
while.
You barely.
You gotta-
if you're lucky, you may get a bill through.
Right.
You know, and I
Yeah.
think he's still too early on in the game. Where again, he's not holding any committee positions of note.
Which would take him maybe 10 years to get.
Right.
And the
No,
guy's,
he's-
how old is
it's-
he? I mean, 70?
Yeah,
I mean, how
well,
old?
I think it's purely an opportunity that he just.
We so clearly, have no principles, and it doesn't matter. His principles are Republican, Democrat. It doesn't matter to them.
Right.
They're willing to elect the guy, and it's amazing.
Well, that's because he's so smooth about how he tells them why he did it. You know, he
Wait.
came back into them. That's
How do
it.
people believe that? Oh, I can see.
I mean, I've seen it happen at the local level, right?
Right.
You know, you see some of that happen at the local level where it's not as big a deal, you know, in terms of whether it's partisan, nonpartisan races. But again, I don't think Republicans would elect a Democrat to a statewide, certainly
No.
not a federal office,
no.
by a long shot.
No. And I can see Nikki Fried definitely have. I agree with everything that April said in regards to the shot that she has. I would see her as the more progressive candidate.
Right.
You know, if you're talking about a Democratic primary,
Right.
I think she definitely, kind of like how, Gillum, I don't think a lot of people were paying attention to Gillum, and he came out of nowhere and beat the rest of the Democrats, right? Because he was more of a progressive and got them fired up. I could see Nikki Fried doing that.
I don't think anyone
But-
was watching what Gillum
Yeah,
was
no,
doing.
but, and I'm not,
caught up to.
I'm not,
Not even his wife.
and I'm not comparing. Yeah,
Nikki,
she wasn't paying
let's
attention
not.
either.
Let's
Issue.
Oh, I think she had. Okay, I'm not gonna say that she has Gillum issues. I am
No,
gonna
not-
say there is a relationship between her and Matt Gaetz, and that needs to be toyed a little bit more within the
What?
media. Yes.
You want to
When you
delve
say a
into that little
relationship,
bit?
what do you mean by
So,
relationship?
So okay.
He's being a little too broad with
I'm
that
being
word.
very
Under
broad
the
with the
current
word
situation with
relationship.
Matt Gaetz,
However, there's many examples of Nikki Fried and Matt Gaetz working together to ensure that the marijuana gets pushed in,
On the
and
marijuana
also
issue,
making
yeah.
sure the other
Whoa.
legislation, and because of their business relationships and working relationships, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, that whole group
Charlie will
of
bring
people,
that out.
yeah,
Charlie
Charlie's
will bring
definitely going
that
to bring
out.
it up.
He's
He
gonna-
doesn't care. I think
Yeah, but Matt's not going to go to bat for her. Matt's not
No,
going to, you know.
Matt's gonna be in federal
but
prison.
she's going to get tied. No, but
That's
if,
entirely
but
possible
if,
the way it
but
looks
if
right now,
she's
but-
tied to him, Charlie's going to use that, and then it's going to. What I could see Charlie doing, we don't want to give any advice here, I don't think, but what I could see him doing is basically painting her as this unknown that could blow up and cause a problem, kind of like Gillum.
Right.
Oh, she's tied to Matt Gaetz. She's got these personal domestic issues going on. There, some cops have been called. Like I could see him saying, "Hey,
Let's,
you know me. I'm Charlie.
people.
Like you know
people
me."
who live in
like-
glass houses should
No,
not be throwing
well, I know
stones.
that. I know,
okay?
but I'm just saying.
So,
If you're Charlie, what are you going to do? You're going to paint her as like a risky candidate that could cause them to lose the governorship, and
But you know
Charlie's
what?
a known entity.
But
could,
none of
you
that
know.
stuff. None of that stuff is really unknown to the voters in Florida. They're all reading about it every day. So the thing is, her opportunity to campaign is just as good as his, and if she's as good at it as she should be running for governor, then there's a whole lot to throw at Charlie as well.
So let's.
She's not that
knows?
good when it comes to retail.
But what has
So
not,
let's-
what,
hold
what
on.
hasn't already
Wait.
been said about Charlie?
So let's do this, all right? Because look, so Charlie, but I think politically Charlie's the safer bet for Democrats,
Yeah,
right?
of course
Because
he
he
is.
has the name ID, because he has the
course he is.
fundraising prowess,
Republicans that
right?
vote for that guy.
Yeah, still, of course, absolutely. And the
I don't know.
no, but look,
I-
the
I
only
have
Congressional
question
district
too.
swings almost
I-
12
Yeah.
points Democrat because
Just
there's
because
so
of
many more
him.
people that
Yes,
vote for it.
there are
you take
Republicans that vote for that
Charlie,
guy.
It goes
you take
from-
Charlie out of that
It goes from a
equation,
D14 to a D2
Right.
in that congressional district.
removing
Just
Charlie
because
from that equation. Yeah, look, and so let's go ahead and
District 1.
let's go ahead and do
People
predictions.
love-
All right.
People love him, and if I was a you don't get me wrong, I've been stuck sitting next to him twice now, because the DC to Tampa commuting. The few times
Here, how you doing? What's your name? How you doing? Oh,
Yeah,
nice to
right.
meet you.
but he's
He is.
really good at it, and it's really annoying how good of a retail politician he is.
Look,
In Florida,
short
it's
story.
all about that.
He's got
Short
He's
story.
got you talking about your mom, and he's got
Yeah.
he's got you talking
Well-
about your family.
So I was early on in Senator Rubio's office as his regional director, and I happened to at the Pinellas County the federal delegation meeting. Okay, so of course Charlie Crist was there, Congressman Bill Rackus. Basically, it was everybody who's everybody in
Name dropping.
Pinellas County politics. Well, no, but because I was representing Senator Rubio,
You're sitting at the table.
I had to sit next to Charlie Crist.
Okay.
So of course, who in politics could Charlie possibly hate more than Senator Rubio, right? Probably nobody, right? Because he basically derailed his
right.
entire political career.
Yeah.
But he still sat next to me and turned to me, and with a big old smile and say, "Hey, Jonathan, how's the senator doing?"
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just like it's he just turns it on, and it's and he just never turns it off. Actually,
He remembers my wife's name. I
Right.
don't know how it is, but he does it. He does it every time, and that's the only issue.
No, he's really good at name dropping.
Yeah.
yeah.
Watch him in a speech. He will point
He's
out
really
half the
good.
people in the
He's
audience
very
who
good.
knows their names.
But again, that's why I don't think
good.
Nikki beats him. I think
Which is
Charlie-
actually a trait
I think
that a lot of
Charlie
people-
wins that
I think-
That was a
he does
trait that.
too.
Nikki or Charlie, who wins?
I would.
Charlie was primary.
I'm going to say I think Charlie pulls out.
I think the money lines up behind Charlie.
Yeah.
April.
Wow. I'd love to see Nikki Fried win.
Yeah.
I just would.
Well, now,
I just,
who do you think Ron DeSantis has the best chance against?
Both.
Ron DeSantis will obliterate
Well,
either
yeah,
one of them.
either one
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
I'll go. I'll
wouldn't
jump
want him to
on.
go up against. Don't you want Charlie?
I've had
Crist
too
to
many
win,
campaigns
though?
against Charlie Crist
But-
already.
yeah,
so
but, I mean,
do we have
don't-
to do that again?
But I mean, don't you
Like,
want
do we really
Charlie
have to
Crist-
do that? Let's have
but,
something
but
fresh
so
and
that
different.
DeSantis is kind of like guaranteed. I mean, don't you want Charlie Crist to be
As
the
a
Democratic
spectator
nominee?
sport, I want Charlie Crist to win.
yes.
Yeah, because I want to see that race. That's like that pay-per-view fight that you absolutely want to watch, okay, and you're willing to pay the $30 for.
$30,
okay?
$50.
Right.
I will
Well, it
pay.
goes to show you how many pay-per-view fights I've ever paid for. And so that's absolutely a matchup I want to watch. But, to April's credit, I think the base, which has gotten very powerful, very vocal. I mean, again, look at what the base did for Gillum. Yeah,
Very progressive.
very progressive. I think they give Nikki the win.
I'm sticking
don't-
with that.
you don't think
and
they
you know
learned
what?
their- you don't think they
it
learned
doesn't
their
bother
lesson
me a
from
bit who
Gillum?
comes out of that primary because I am confident that Ron DeSantis will
Yeah, I
pull
think
it
he will
off.
too.
I can
There's
see-
no
I
problem
can-
with that.
think
I
he will
agree
too.
with you guys. I can see the path of Nikki, and I can see the path.
It's the progressive.
Because the
The
progressives
whole thing
hate
is going
Charlie.
progressive, and
The
Charlie
progressive hate-
doesn't fit
yeah.
that mold, buddy.
Yeah.
He doesn't even come
He
close.
does fit that mold. He's just unwilling to unmask that mold.
That's exactly. We don't have to go down
Well,
that route, but I
it's-
agree.
I'll
with
tell you.
and that might be the way to
Listen,
he
they
won't.
elected
Put your hands
He might
Gillum.
make a big
They
announcement.
elected
He
Gillum
might
over
make a-
Gwen
he
Graham.
might make a big
Okay.
announcement.
He might make a
that-
big announcement.
to seem more progressive.
And you
I
know
wouldn't
what?
put it past
and
him.
you know what? If he does,
He
that's okay.
All right, there, Schitt's Creek. I don't think I didn't catch that. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to start bringing this down here to the hometown. First of all, with Tampa's very own cancel culture, just about a week and a half ago, we saw right up in the Tampa Bay Times, basically. I wouldn't say they were chastising him, but apparently there are a lot of progressive and Democrat groups who have been chastising Luis Vieira for speaking at a Community Patriots meeting. Now, for those of you who may not or maybe not familiar with Community Patriots, it's an organization that is growing very quickly here in the Tampa Bay area, much like the Tea Party did, and I would say maybe of a similar philosophy, and you guys can expand on that in a second, but it's certainly conservative-leaning, Republican-leaning people in the community who want to get more involved, who want to see, again, a change in our local politics. But again, Luis Vieira, as I said at the start of the show, he is a friend of the show. He's a friend to those of us, who have had the opportunity to spend time with them. He's a great guy. He's sensible. His father, being a Cuban immigrant, was a staunch Republican. Anibal, I think, said his son is a staunch Republican. He is very much, I would say, a moderate Democrat,
Right.
and he will admittedly say so. And he has always been very open to coming on this show, coming to the Young Republicans, speaking to people that don't agree with him.
Correct.
And look, despite the disagreements that we do have, he's also someone that doesn't get worked up emotionally. He's very sensible, and he's a great public speaker. And it's unfortunate because, again, he's someone who you want to see more of, despite maybe not agreeing with him politically. But you want to see someone of his temperament, of his thoughtfulness, of, again, his open-mindedness, be in local politics.
I think we need more of that in local politics. We need more of that in all politics. We need an open dialogue where people are comfortable talking with people who don't always think like they do. And there's not enough of that in this country today. The community patriots, they kind of grew out of, actually, they were a neighborhood watch group that started doing some things during the 2020 elections, and they grew and grew and grew, and it grew out of control. But they are, even though they may be Republican leaning, they have made it clear that they will support Democrats if, in fact, that's their chosen candidate in a race. So they're not truly like a Republican organization. They claim to be constitutionalists. They've worked against some Republicans in this community. They've worked heavily in primaries against some sitting Republicans in this community. But I think that it's great that they even invited the councilman there to speak, and I think it's great that he showed up, and I think that we really need to see more of that dialogue, particularly in a city like Tampa. There's not a Republican on the city council, okay?
Right.
And those of us who live in the city and want anything done, we better learn how to talk to those people and respect that they're our council members and go to them and try and have a dialogue and make them understand our issues and tell them where we're coming from.
Well, this was the thing when I was running the Young Republicans, and I continued to promote this philosophy, which is that we live in the city. For those of us that live in the city, they represent us. They are our elected officials. I never understood the rule of no Democrats allowed to speak at your REC meeting or your Republican meeting or whatever. I think the exception should be if they are either running for office or they are sitting in office. Speak to the Young Republicans a number of times, and again, we'd had Luis Vieira, we'd had other Democrats come to speak, because I think that's our opportunity to ask the questions and to raise the issues that are important to us.
Right.
And it's not an audience that we normally get.
Right.
You're not going to get the same response and the same attention at a city council meeting. And if they're willing to come into your neck of the woods, into your environment, I say you take advantage of that opportunity and you get those few minutes to speak to them and to maybe make more sense of where they come from politically, to hopefully find some common ground.
Right. Well, the Republican Party's long had a policy of not giving their podium to a Democrat. It just is what it is. But that's why a lot of people in this community have to take advantage of organizations like Tampa Tiger Bay Club. Go there, get to know these people, see them. You see them during the elections, and there have to be other outlets. There are also like neighborhood associations and community groups that put on different forums. But the bottom line is, what we really need to do is get back to growing the Republican Party, winning again, and getting more Republicans on city councils across the county.
I agree. I completely agree. But I also am very disappointed of how the cancel culture in Tampa was so negative and so visceral when it came to Lewis, actually the council member, going to an organization that they might not agree with 100% and calling these people horrible names. Again, at the end of the day, the Patriots are not a registered Republican organization, chartered organization, and I'm perfectly okay with that. That doesn't need to be, not every conservative organization needs to be chartered by the Republican Party. You can actually do a lot more not being chartered. You have a lot more freedom being a nonpartisan organization, and you have a little bit more leeway in certain conversations. Because again, I would, as for the HREC and any other large county organization for Republicans, I don't think it's appropriate to have a Democrat on the podium. I can understand that, but with the Log Cabin or with TBYR or with any of the other ones, I can perfectly see a sitting representative for that district going there and having a conversation with those people.
Usually the political affiliation, someone's political party affiliation, kind of gives you an idea of their worldview, and so that's important. But when I think about like city council and even like school boards and things like that, it's about the trains running on time.
Yeah.
I mean, like the city council's not going to affect, abortion. I mean, they're not going to take up immigration. The school board can't do anything that impacts, things like that, national topics and state topics. So we want to know that the trains are running on time.
I can tell you that voters don't think that way, okay?
Yeah, they don't.
They
Yeah,
want
that's
to
right.
know
Yeah.
party affiliation. I have worked on so many nonpartisan races where I've had voters actually get angry because we didn't have it on our literature as to what these people were. And because we couldn't,
Yeah,
we were
they
prohibited
want-
from
yeah.
putting it.
Yeah.
They want to know because it gives the voters an indication of what your thoughts are,
worldview.
where
Yeah.
you might stand on issues, and how you're coming out on that. And it's not.
Well, and I think when you're campaigning,
and I
I
can
agree
tell
with that,
you,
though.
but I can tell you, the voters, for some voters, it doesn't matter if you're running for school board or
Yeah.
you're running for dog catcher. For some voters, the number one litmus test for whether they're going to vote for them or not is the abortion issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just the bottom line. That's
Yeah.
just how they think. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
and,
On
and-
both
and-
sides.
And policies are important. Policy positions are important to people because it's a world. It affects their worldview, and so that's important. And I agree with you when it comes to campaigns. Those things are super important. But when we're just talking about council members being able to go around the community and go to groups that may not necessarily align with them, I don't see why that's controversial. I mean, whether you like it or not, that is your city council member or that is your mayor. So if you don't want to hear from them, don't hear from them. But I mean, they're still the mayor. They're still the council member.
Well, and that's
So
the opportunity
you might as well-
to hold them accountable or ask the tough questions.
Actually, you would think that the way to address it actually would be, okay, we have this council member. We know they're a Democrat. We need to be on that. We need to be inviting them to everything that we can that challenges their views, so that they understand that there are residents in the community that they represent that really care about this and want them to do things in a fiscally responsible way, in a liberty-minded way. That just remind these people that they represent everybody. If all you let them do is hear from Democrats, they're going to believe their own ideas are the best.
There's not a city council member in this city that only hears from their own political party. I can assure you of that because I've been intimately involved in city council. But the other thing is, I think that people.
COVID, how much of an impact that the local governments can have on your life versus state and federal governments, because there is still
In Tampa, okay, it hasn't been lifted.
It just
it's
can't
still
be
there.
Right.
It-
So it's
so the
enforced on the
governor has
businesses.
overridden in that and said
fine. He
no.
overrode the fine.
He
No, he overrode
overrode it and
everything.
said people can do what they want to do, and then the CDC came out and said if you're fully vaxxed, you don't need to be wearing them anymore.
their own decisions at this point. There's many businesses who are not enforcing the anti-masks. There's some.
So are
who
you
want to
saying that
have
the
it.
Hillsborough County mandate is?
No,
Are they
they're
not? Are
not.
they not going after business?
Not any
Not
longer.
anymore.
Okay,
Not
so they're
any
not-
longer. They
so they
quit
have
doing
the-
that.
so they have the
quit
mandate,
doing
but
that.
they're not enforcing
But
it.
I'm saying exactly. They're
Okay.
not doing what they were doing. They were pulling liquor licenses and shutting people
Right,
down. They're
right,
not
right,
doing
right.
that anymore.
Okay.
They haven't been doing that for some time because the
Right.
backlash was huge.
Yeah.
But when they have the power to do that,
Yeah.
it makes the people understand that the local government has more control over your day-to-day life than just about anybody else.
As a small business owner, one of the things that I was hopeful, and we'll see if there's been a change in people's understanding of government, is I think there's a lot of business people that they probably, just by the sheer nature that they have to do math every day, they're probably fiscally conservative and maybe socially conservative, maybe not, but certainly they understand the financial issues, and they just want to be left alone to do business and everything. But I don't think a lot of those people understood what you just said, which is that the government can shut your business down tomorrow, and that's your livelihood.
Right.
And when you're a small business owner, you really can't just go get a job. Like
Yeah.
you've left corporate America maybe 10 years ago. Like no one's hiring. Like You know, like
But
you
you can't just walk away from your business either.
And you can't walk away from the business.
You
have a lease that you're personally responsible. Maybe you've personally guaranteed
and you've
the
got
lease.
inventory that's coming in. You've got inventory sitting on the shelves.
You have product.
You've got
owe
food
invoices.
in the refrigerators.
Yeah, and the government just puts a lock on your door and says, "Sorry, you're done." And you're like,
do you know
"What?"
how much?
You could go bankrupt. The government can bankrupt you overnight simply because they decided to.
Well,
and
I think
I hope business owners realize you better wake up and care about the city council.
That's important.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely going to see fallout from COVID, again, at every level of government, county commission,
I don't know.
city council.
I don't know. I say that the bulk of the backlash will be towards county commission, because 3 of those members sat on the board before the BOCC took it over, and I think they're going to get a lot more blowback. Now, the benefit of it is that there are more Democrats on the BOCC than there are Republicans, 5-2. So we could easily do a huge campaign if the local party was organized enough to be able to do a swap of it. We could probably take over the BOCC and then have a good run, because the next, I think, 2 or 3 months after the general elections are city elections for city of Tampa.
March.
In March of the following year.
2023.
So I think it's 4 months after the general election?
November 22 is the general, and then March of 2023 will be the city elections.
So if people got their ish together, we could really do have a legitimate campaign to move forward to see if we could swipe it. Now, what I think Lewis is doing, because this is where this all started, is that he's playing the middle lane, which I think is brilliant. Hillsborough County,
because he knows he could get defeated.
no,
he could
no,
get defeated by a
I don't think
Republican.
he'll be
Well,
defeated by
especially
a
in his
Republican.
district.
But his district could.
But his district is kind of purplish.
It is very
Yeah.
purplish, and he has been able to toe the
he only
line.
won by 1,000 votes or less, like a couple hundred, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't,
City council,
it wasn't a whole
but
lot.
city council votes, there's 5,000, 10,000 votes to begin
Yeah,
with.
he only won
So it's
by
not that
a
big of a deal.
vote.
I will say this: a lot of Republicans and a lot of Republicans do like Luis Vieira. I think he's doing a great job making sure that his name is out there and letting people be comfortable as Republicans go to him to talk to him. That's the big deal. I don't feel comfortable going to many Democrats on the BOCC or even city council, even though I know they were Republicans a month before they signed up to run for that race. That's no here nor there. But you don't feel comfortable as a Republican. And that's why I think Lewis is doing. I feel very comfortable. I know a lot of other Republicans that feel comfortable. And if they have a legitimate Republican running for that district, which I doubt they're going to have one, he'll win again. Or he might even become mayor. Who knows? I think that's where that's going. I think Lewis wants to become mayor, and I think we're going to see a lot of people moving positions of where they're going this next election cycle.
Well, look, I mean, again, so, Lewis is a great guy, and I think he adds to the Democrat bench when it comes to, people that could move up the ladder politically. And I think Democrats would be incredibly foolish, especially at the local level, to take someone like that out of the equation, because he is someone that has been able to transcend political parties. But again, that Democrats are going to do what they're going to do, and to kind of put his foot down and say, like, no, this needs to be acceptable. This needs to be okay, and it should be promoted and not chastised,
Right.
That he's speaking to groups that may not necessarily agree with him politically. So, all right, let's go ahead and get a little more granular here as we begin to wrap up tonight's show and kind of bring this right down to our special guest for the night. It's a topic that we've discussed frequently here on this show, but of course that brings us back to the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee and the dysfunction that continues to happen there, the lack of action that continues to happen there. April, why don't you go ahead and just give us the background kind of on where things stand now and how this has kind of escalated just over the past few weeks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking
What are you talking about?
So let me just say this. I may not answer your question, John.
I'll answer
but,
it.
So.
Well, we can walk around it.
I'm going to step in.
Let me just say this. I was elected in August as the state committee woman. It is one of 2 party positions that are elected countywide on the primary ballot. And I challenged the sitting state committee woman, and I won handily, I must say. But I took office December 1st, and my whole goal and my whole purpose for doing it is to get Republicans in Hillsborough County back to growing and winning. There are 70,000 more registered Democrats in Hillsborough County than there are Republicans. We need to do a vicious voter registration drive. We need to recruit viable candidates. We need to get people on city councils. We need to take the county commission back. We need a majority of our legislators back. And that was my driving force, and it still is my driving force. And I have had a tremendous amount of support. I've been out all over the county since I got elected. I've been talking at Republican clubs and meeting with people, and people are ready. They are ready to get to work. They are ready to grow this party. They are ready to win again. And we need solid core leadership to make that happen. And I think there's a great deal of frustration with the party because of the failures in the last 3 election cycles. So it's time for us to do that. And I'm going to use every opportunity and every vehicle that I have available to me to try and help that happen.
Yeah, because again, we've now been going on 4 years that there's been a lack of effort to do voter registration, a lack of effort in recruiting candidates and developing viable candidates, which again all falls under the Hillsborough County Republican Party's responsibilities. The biggest gripe that I have with them is that they're obsessed with President Trump. Okay, and I don't mean that in the sense that that's a bad thing that they support the president. I just mean that that's not a race that they should be worried about. Okay, the federal races. Thank you, there, Anibal. So the federal races are not their responsibility. The statewide races, state house representatives, state senators, those are not necessarily their responsibility. Their responsibility, and where we've lost the most traction, is at the local level with our county commission, with city council. Again, I mean, I've been living here since 2006. And I don't think there has been a Republican on the Tampa City Council since I've lived here.
Yeah, well, when you first got here, there were. We had a couple.
Yeah, we
okay?
did.
Yeah.
Because Rose Ferlita was still on the city council, as was Sean Harrison, and we've had Republicans on the city council. So, but that's something we worked hard to do.
Right.
We had strong, viable candidates that garnered great support, and we worked hard to do it. And I can tell you that in the early 1990s, when we took over the county commission with a Republican majority, it was because the Republican Party in this county worked hard. They had boots on the ground, they raised money, they were a driving force. And that's what made that happen. But the local party is responsible for local races. That's their job.
Yeah. Well, and look, and I'll take the guilt where it belongs, which is that I allowed, along with many others, I allowed the current group of people that are leading that organization to ostracize those who were very active, very vocal, very involved, and allowed themselves, again, including myself, to be basically kind of pushed out. To be disenfranchised, and to the extent that now there is a fraction of the membership from what it was maybe 10 years ago.
525. It was at its height about 10 years ago. We had 525.
It is not it was awesome.
I'm talking
And
about-
just stay around, Joe. We'll see you again.
I am
Austin,
hopeful that we will see it again. So, and for that reason, you, Jonathan, and everybody at this table, you guys are members, but you're not. You got to come back. And so do all the members that left in discouragement. And I understand why
Jonny
people
took his
left.
phone, went home.
And, okay, fine. Guess what? Come back, because we need you. We need people
Yeah.
like you. We need people that understand. One thing is, the only way, I hear it every day, you got to change things. Well, I can't change things. The party has to change things, and it has to change from within. That means the members drive the whole organization.
Right.
So we need our members to come back. We need new members. We need lots of members. Let's get back to 500. Let's see what happens.
So the comment section is blowing up at the moment. Fred, if you are part of the organization back in the 90s,
I don't
and you
even
need to
have it
get
open
back
yet.
in the organization today, sir, I feel that we need to have that conversation.
Fred Prone went way back.
I know.
And Margie
I
Kay.
know.
Yeah, Fred
he
needs to
went
come
way
back too.
back.
I already
He
told
went
him
way
as well.
So I think what's happening now is that because so many, especially Republicans in the city of Tampa,
they are right now in the HRC. And I think it's been really focused on the
the larger picture and not focus on local. And I think because we've as an organization, we've stopped looking at the local and just focus on the larger picture, which has not helped us at all winning any elections inside the city, inside the Hillsborough County. We've lost the presidential, the last 3 cycles, April, I think it is?
Yes.
That we've lost the presidential. So obviously something is not working. Obviously it's a little delusional that people are talking about. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a leadership change. I will honestly say that. And eventually that will happen, God willing. But at the moment, and I really think people should be talking about this more, is that, and I'll bluntly say it, unless Jonny, you want to go into a different direction about what happened at the last meeting.
Yeah, go for
but
it.
I think it's inappropriate that we have members inside the Republican Party of Hillsborough County verbally attacking other members on the podium during a meeting. I think that is absolutely inappropriate. And until people start having the decorum that's necessary, I think these things need to be tabled. I think it's very inappropriate to be attacking someone that is one of 2 people that actually elected to the Republican, the elected by the electorate. So, I mean, April, I know that was focused on you and your response to actually trying to get boots on the ground when it comes to voting.
Anibal, I just have to say this. The attempt was made to embarrass.
To censure me, to reprimand me, and to send me for counseling for various things that I have done.
I want to know what
let me just
counselor you want to
finish.
go to.
Thank you. They lost. It was not successful because the members that were there understood that it was inappropriate and it was wrong. And there was a motion made to table. It was tabled. It was done. And according to the parliamentarian, that's the end of it. They won't allow it to be brought back up. So that is what it is.
But this is not a new thing.
Yeah,
They've done this before.
yeah.
And the fact that you have a Republican organization that is essentially trying to stifle the freedom of speech, okay? Because I've heard that there's even a rule where you're not supposed to speak ill of I guess, the elected board members.
Oh, really?
That's what I'd heard.
The only one I know about is Ronald Reagan's rule where he says, do not speak ill of other Republicans. Those
Right.
people, I haven't heard any other rules.
I know-
I certainly haven't seen any, and I know the rules pretty well.
I think Jonathan is talking about when they redid the Constitution in regards to posting things or like making comments about other Republicans
that's
on the
not-
comment section.
Well, that's their Facebook guidelines or something
That
like
might be
that.
that.
But that's not very effective either because all I see are Facebook fights on their Facebook pages.
All I know
anyway,
is
so
that someone
doesn't
commented,
work.
I think someone commented on our Facebook page for the thread who is a REC member and then quickly deleted it because he got pressured tonight. And so I already screenshot it and I'll talk to you guys later about that.
Well, here's the thing. I want to.
But we know you're watching.
But more,
we
wait,
know
wait,
you're
hold
watching.
on, and I'll let you get in there, Joe. But more importantly, to what April's trying to accomplish, and really what stemmed, what started all of this was the fact that the people that have been ostracized by this organization are some of the most important people in the community, which are the donors. Okay, and as much as we hate to say it, okay, but their money matters, and they helped a lot of people get elected, and in this particular case, and I'm not going to name him because it's irrelevant, and you can Google it if you want to, but the gentleman that is trying to help us get back on track as a political party, regain some power, some leverage here in this county, is actually putting his money where his mouth is and trying to
Correct.
do something about it,
Correct.
and they are here attacking him for it.
Yes.
But have
Well,
been
and
attacking.
he abandoned the party because they attacked him then and they wouldn't respect him and they wouldn't talk to him. He's not the only one. Donors have fled. This party is not well funded.
No.
It
Well,
was at one time totally well funded.
It was-
It is no longer well
I
funded.
remember going to Lincoln Day dinners and it was like fighting for a ticket to get in there like a week before,
Yeah.
and me
Yeah.
making sure I was
It
was a
full.
part of it.
It was
full.
full. The
difficult.
Lincoln Day dinners were full.
The last one I remember was under Artwood, and I know there was maybe a couple after that, but the reason it stuck out to me because I remember, like, if you wanted to have lunch with a congressman, it was like
Yeah.
$10,000,
Yeah.
and people were gladly
Yeah.
putting
Yep.
up the money
Yeah.
for it,
Yeah.
and now I don't even know where the money's coming from or how they're staying afloat, but this organization has been broke for years.
Right.
Well-
And you can't, listen,
I have no comment on the budget.
money is the mother's milk of politics.
Yes.
Okay, you can't do it without money, and it's just not going to work. So there's a whole bunch of different issues I think that need to be solved here. But what we really need to focus on is winning and growing this party. And I mean, I encourage everybody that left to come back. I've been doing it. I've been making phone calls. They all know it. But I also encourage new people to come join us because I think we have a future and I think it's bright and I think things will change. But it only changes from within. And we have to look positively and get back to growing and winning.
Well, Republican ideals, okay, lead to the greatest amount of freedom and prosperity for the people. And if you believe that about yourself and your own policy positions, then it's worth fighting for. Now, I will acknowledge that one of the hardest leadership positions you can have is trying to lead an all-volunteer organization. Okay, that's not easy.
Right.
But having said that, when you're doing so, you have to stay laser focused on what your mission is because it's very easy to have, we'll call it mission creep, okay? Like what happens to the military sometimes. You get in doing one thing and the next thing you know, you're doing 10 different things that you really didn't go there to do. I mean, with a political organization, you have to stay laser focused on what your mission is. And like April said, the mission really is to get Republicans elected. And that's in Hillsborough County. And I understand that the campaign or senatorial campaign, those things are exciting. It does get people excited and it gets can't side of the fact that if you're not raising money and registering voters and supporting candidates in Hillsborough County, then what are you doing as the Hillsborough County Party?
Right.
And let me just say this, that in the last couple of decades, Hillsborough was the bellwether, not only for the state of Florida, but for this country. And where Hillsborough went, the country went. We predicted all of the presidential elections. We predicted the gubernatorial elections because we focused on the local races. And what comes with that is the upper races come with it because the down bottom ballot races are the ones that need the hard work. So the local party works hard. That's how we took over the county commission. And at the same time, we were electing the president. We have lost for the president in the last two election
It's not
cycles.
even. It's not a bellwether county anymore.
No, it's
No one-
done
yeah, no one's
because
concerned about Hillsborough,
we
yeah.
are not competitive enough, and we
Yeah.
need to get back to that. I mean, we took great pride in the fact that while we were taking over local elections and gaining local seats, we were still winning this county for our presidents. That's not happening
The
anymore.
last one was Bush in 04.
Exactly.
Bush in 04, I think, was the last one.
No.
It went for Obama in 08.
Oh, yeah, it was
Yeah.
Bush
So
04.
Bush 04, yeah.
But again, this isn't
I
a
remember it
difficult
well.
conversation to have. We know where the problem is. We are 70,000 votes in the deficit, which means that we should be doing 100% to get the voter registration back in order.
Yeah.
We know other counties that have done it. They've done it. They've done a great job doing it, and we need to get back to that kind of
Well,
leadership.
and this is the biggest joke is that they think that doing one table of voter registration at a gun show a month is going to somehow close the gap. Look,
Are you aware? Are you sure that's the only thing they're doing?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that's just what I've heard. But when we look at
their argument would be, well, then come do more, you know. And I
Sure.
mean, I will say, I mean, you got to have people, you know, but we don't have a lot of people. The numbers keep.
well, because they continue to ostracize
Yeah,
people,
right.
and anybody that doesn't fall in line with everything that's on their agenda and their frame of mind, then they push them out. And so again, I've done voter registration.
Yep.
I've done door to door. I've done phone banking. I've been there, done that. And again, I'll say, because I've said it every time we have this conversation, no one on that executive board has ever been on a single successful campaign. They've never run a campaign. They've never been a candidate. They don't know what it takes to win elections. And so, yes, when April won, did that give me a lot of hope? Absolutely, because finally you started to see that, okay, maybe we can kind of turn the tide here a little bit. The same with Tom Gatens. Tom he's a great business guy, and I think that's probably why they haven't tried to get rid of him just yet, because he's apparently done enough to kind of keep them at bay, but I know that they know that he's not necessarily on board with everything that they are doing or not doing, for that matter.
Tom is not a yes man.
Right.
Tom is definitely not a yes man. He cut his chops work with the YRs. He is and other campaigns that
He's
he's
been
done
in the
the
game
past.
a long time. Yeah.
And so, like him and April, I have full confidence in them trying to do what they can to right the ship.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, what's needed, and the comment section, I'm not going to talk about what's happening in the comment section because I'm not going to go there, Fred. But I think what needs to happen is that people that are like-minded like us need to come back to the organization so that we can be represented in those organizations. We can bitch all we want, but if we're not attending the meetings, then we can't influence anything.
No, because look, I mean, we have to follow what is now basically the game plan that Pinellas put together. Pinellas under Nick DeSegli, who is currently state representative, going to be running for state senator soon, really turned Pinellas County into a viable, competitive county, basically replacing Hillsborough as that bellwether, because they are now, I think, within less than 5,000 votes, I believe, in terms of the discrepancy between Republicans and Democrats. Right. And this is in Pinellas County, which is nationally known as one of the most liberal counties in the country. When you look at the St. Petersburg City Council and all these other municipalities in there, okay, they again, traditionally are seen as a very liberal county, but yet Republicans are still very competitive there. Incredibly competitive.
In Hillsborough County, we never had a majority Republican registration. We've always been behind a Democratic registration. But we were close enough that we could win elections. Mm-hmm. And we worked hard enough that we could win elections. And we were well funded enough that we could win elections. We have to get back to winning. But to that end, I am heading up a very serious voter registration drive. We're in the process of raising money, raising volunteers and getting organized, and we've just qualified as a third-party voter registration organization. But you can sign up on my website. You can get our emails. I'm sending out newsletters. AprilSchiff.com.
There we go. All right.
Very easy. There's another one though. HillsboroughLeadershipCouncil.com. Okay. And the Hillsborough Leadership Council is a political committee that was formed specifically to start getting candidates elected in Hillsborough County, and we're raising money and working towards those goals.
Awesome. Well, again, so AprilSchiff.com, HillsboroughLeadershipCouncil.com, and we spoke obviously about a week ago, and I wasn't able to make it to this last meeting, but I promised you that I would, be coming to the meetings again and get reengaged, because. Honestly, part of me thought that maybe if you kind of just let them kind of sit out there and do their thing, that it would kind of implode on its own, and I think it's come close a few times. And look, the truth of the matter is that after all of these years, and after everybody that they've ostracized from the organization, and the hole that they've dug for themselves, I think it's time for them to step aside and realize the failures that they've accumulated, and let somebody else take a shot at maybe turning the ship around, because they obviously don't have the resources, the knowledge, or the expertise to do it.
We need to get people back into those meetings. We know plenty of Republicans that do not attend the meetings, and you all need to start coming back. Bring popcorn if necessary, sit in the back and just watch, and we'll have drinks afterwards. But that's what needs to start happening.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign, the most important and relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host, as always. Again, please subscribe to the audio version of our podcast on the tech overlords over at Apple, Google, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. You can also like, share, and comment this broadcast right here, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube. Let's go ahead and bring this show for a close with Anibal's favorite segment, which is the stories that we didn't get to talk about today. I won't put you on the spot tonight, but I will put our guest on the spot. What's a story that?
And we're back.
Oh, all right. All right, so we're going to do the stories that we didn't get to talk about today. Of course, it's going to be a short week because we'll be back on Monday at a regular scheduled time and day. April, thank you again for being on the show. Thank you for lending, again, your County Red again. What was the story that you're kind of following right now that we didn't get to talk about today?
Actually, I've been working pretty hard for the last few days and haven't really been following any stories. So,
Okay.
but I just appreciate you doing what you're doing, having me here, and I look forward to energizing more people and winning again in Hillsborough County. So, thanks.
Well, I'll take.
Man. Crypto. That's what we got to talk about.
I'll take April's slot here, and I'll say just a quick shout out to Commissioner Stacey White, who had a press conference today about fixing our roads, and of course trying to give people back their money from the transportation tax. So hopefully those efforts continue, and he continues to put pressure on using that money appropriately, or at least at the very least giving it back to the people. So Joe, crypto, how deep are you?
Well, I'm not into that deep.
No?
I've dabbled a
You
little
going to
bit,
the moon?
and I'm up. I'm not going to the
And then
moon.
crash?
I'm gonna stay on Earth. I'm not getting in a rocket, even if it is built by Elon. No, I just think it's interesting, and it's. I think a lot of people are probably losing a lot of money this week, and I think that's unfortunate. It is kind of like gambling, but there is a place, I think, for crypto in the future. And it's just, I heard today that there's now something like 9,000 different types of crypto coins, which is insane.
Sure.
And surely this has got to all flush itself out. There's really no regulation.
Right.
The SEC's not involved, but I think today or maybe a couple days ago, Wells Fargo said that they're going to develop a strategy for their wealthy investors to get involved. So I don't know. It's in its infancy still, even though it's been going on for almost 10 years now, I think.
Right.
But the feds are probably going to get involved at some point in time. There's probably going to be some regulation to establish parameters to stop some of the fraud that's happening. There's like lots of cases of fraud involved in crypto and people being taken advantage of. But I think there's a role for it, and I'm just watching it, and it's interesting to see.
Well,
what
I mean,
happens.
the biggest, I think, fascinating part for me has been to see these major corporations who are now saying that they're going to start accepting
Exactly.
Bitcoin,
So, yeah.
for transactions, and how is that exactly going to work, given how fluid the value is, and again, and how it lacks and not only any kind of
Yeah.
regulation, but
Yeah.
any kind of backing, really.
And that's just it. It's so volatile right now that
Yeah.
it's not really able to. I don't know that people are really using it as a currency. So if you think about that,
I mean,
so if you think
3%
about
of the United States population is a lot, though.
It is, but if you think about it, if that represents all the money that's involved, then it's
Yeah.
not a currency that anybody's using. But people, like you said, retailers, the Mavericks, I think a football or a baseball team is using it now. So people are starting to use crypto to make purchases.
Right.
Now, Bitcoin at 40, 50, 60, whatever $1,000, I think that seems like unrealistic to people.
35.
And I know we don't want to go all into it, but
Yeah.
it's different than your Doge coins or whatever.
Right.
But if there is a cryptocurrency that becomes widely accepted and has the value of somewhere around 50 cents to a couple bucks, you could see, and it doesn't cost a ton of money to do transactions, and if that transaction is cheaper than credit card fees, then you could really see people saying, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense then. Our money's digital anyway.
Yeah, right.
It's already in a bank. Most of our
Sure.
transactions are digital anyway.
Yeah.
It's just a balance sheet transfer from
Yeah,
one bank
just
to the
ones and
next.
zeros.
Yeah. So what difference does it make if I can put it into crypto and keep the government kind of out of it?
Right.
And that's really the attraction I think some people have to it, is that the government's not really involved in crypto. So we'll see what
Yes.
happens. We'll see
Yes.
what
Yeah.
happens. He thinks there's no inflation. I think there's a lot of
So
inflation.
I
We'll see
will.
what happens.
I don't believe in investing in a asset, which I believe cryptocurrency is.
Logic, no, dollars are.
What's dollars? What's currency?
I
What's
earn
dollars
dollars.
backed? What's dollars backed
by the
by?
U.S. government,
which is insolvent.
which is insolvent.
On paper, it's
So
insolvent.
can you go to? How did you buy this? By
Okay.
U.S. currency or by a digital currency? And all those companies you talked about, also
Yeah.
this week they canceled, saying they're not going to be taking coins anymore.
Let's be honest.
This is
The
a
US
larger
dollar-
conversation, and
the-
all I'm going to say
the
is
US
you
dollar-
research tulips in the 1700s
Yeah.
in Amsterdam,
Oh, bro.
and let's
Well,
see what happened with
it's not
tulips.
tulips, but-
when if you had one tulip, you could buy a house in Amsterdam.
let's be clear.
That's how crazy it
Let's be
went.
clear. When
There
you
is
said-
no legitimate value in cryptocurrencies.
I'm gonna defend
no
something.
legitimate.
I'm gonna back you up on
The
something.
blockchain is
Yeah,
legit.
that's good technology.
That
Yeah.
is
I'm
legit,
gonna
and I
back you up
truly
on
believe
something.
that.
I'm gonna
but
back you up on something.
Cryptocurrency is not a thing.
The U.S. dollar is, when you say it's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, I sort of agree with that, but what it's really backed by is 11 aircraft carriers that are in the water with 2 more in reserve.
I have no
That's
problem with
what
that, baby.
the U.S. dollar is
I
backed
have
by.
no problem with that,
okay?
baby.
The world reserve currency is backed by 11 United States
Also,
aircraft
if you
carriers in
think
the
that
water. That's
you're
what it's
if you're
backed by.
investing in gold or cryptocurrency just in case the U.S. dollar collapses, I'm going to tell you this right now: the U.S. collapses, that means the world has collapsed
Sure,
in one
yeah.
way or another, and you're not going to carry the 12 pounds of gold to try to buy something. It's
No.
going to be a bullet,
Right.
and if you have rice,
Yeah,
that's going to be
yeah,
the
you should be
currency
buying beans
when
and
things
bullets,
happen.
yeah.
I will say my thing that I'm looking forward to, besides the collapse of the tulip market, is
Fred, the petrodollar.
is actually focusing on the inflation and deflation conversation that's coming up this summer. I look forward to seeing who is right and who's not. I'm gonna say I think the deflation argument is getting a lot more talk about through the channels, and we'll see what it looks like when stores and other department companies have an excess of supply materials that drive down the cost and result in deflation. But we'll see what happens in a few
I picked the wrong
months.
year to build a shed. I picked the wrong
No,
year to
you
build a
picked
shed.
the wrong month to build a shed.
Oh, okay.
That's what happened.
All right. Well, I wasn't sure if you guys were done yet or not. You know.
They're done.
No, I know. I need to just give you guys your own show. Is what I need to do. But no, look, to me, like again, I agree with Anibal in terms of the technology is really what I think is going to be revolutionary here or transcendent. As far as the value of the currency goes. I don't think it's going to be any of the ones we're talking about now. It's going to be probably some currency that, but you're right. I mean, eventually,
Something will flush out.
yeah, not that there can only be one, but I think there is going to have to be some unity as to some type of, what's
Please
the
let
word?
this be a Highlander comment that you're saying.
No,
that there could only be one.
Well, more or less, but I mean, just
that was a fun
that there has to be some. I'm forgetting the term now, where everybody agrees that okay, these are the ones that actually have any value.
In order
so.
for something to be a currency, people have to. It has to not only be widely available and used.
Essentially, it has to have trust that you're going to give this new
Say it.
And that it won't drop
and that's why people
18%,
use the dollar.
27%,
Right.
32%.
You can't have some. Yeah.
in a day.
Right. If you and I were if I was gonna buy something from you with cash, and you believed that tomorrow, it could be worth 10 times as much.
Yeah.
You couldn't run a business like that.
Well, no,
You
exactly.
couldn't-
And so-
you couldn't operate that way.
Well, and the
If
thing
your-
is that
if
this
your-
is-
if your product cost
Right.
could widely fluctuate by 50% in a week.
Yeah.
There's just be no way to operate.
Right now, it's
business.
basically just a stock. I mean, that's basically it's just like buying a stock
Nope.
and in what's not even a tangible
It's right.
company or
It is
entity.
a
See, I mean,
But
if it
Ford Motor
You
Company
can.
is not gonna grow 30% in a day,
Right.
and then go down another 50%
Sure.
in another day. Like that's not gonna happen because that wouldn't be based on any real information.
What? Are you
Like
telling
that.
me that cryptocurrencies are not based on any real information?
I'm saying it's based on people. I admit that it's based on a lot of hype. I acknowledge that.
Oy vey.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
move this.
based on
Let's
a lot of
wrap
hype,
this
yeah.
up.
all right for me personally, I'll say I'm actually
Go to the moon.
And then crash on the moon.
mine's nowhere near as I guess as deep as
talk about
the
yours
ones you
already?
guys talk about. No, I was just going to say that for
Steady
me,
White?
I'm actually here on standby as Ford is going to do a reveal on the new F-150 Lightning
The
edition,
electric,
which is going to be all electric. My dad has the original F-150 Lightning, which is basically a racing edition of their sports truck. So this is going to be an electric version of that, and so we'll see. Especially since I've already got a reservation to buy a Cybertruck.
I was gonna say.
I
I was gonna say, when is that?
They keep pushing back, you know.
Whatever
so
Elon Musk tells us.
yeah, exactly.
You reserved that
But-
thing like 2 years ago. didn't
Sure,
No, it was
yeah.
about a year-
And
it
it
was
was
before the
supposed to be,
crash.
yeah, well, and before COVID and all that stuff. So it was supposed to be this year that they were going to come out.
Right.
So I'm basically just guessing it's probably going to be about another year. Although there are some that have apparently been delivered.
Yeah.
I know I've seen videos of one that was like in Miami.
Yeah.
You know, there's some that are starting to
How much
pop
is that
up.
bad boy? How much is that?
It's about 80. I thought it was
Well,
80 to
that's like
150.
fully. That's
Yeah.
like fully loaded. I mean, but you can get
What's
one.
the base model truck?
Yeah, about 40.
I mean, that's,
You know. Yeah.
yeah, that's an F-150
Exactly.
Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah. So I'm looking to dress mine up like a DeLorean. So
Okay.
So anyways,
And with that, people, thank you so much for listening to the Yard Signs. Please remember to like and subscribe.
and also check out the audio version of the podcast on Google, Apple, Spotify, Audible, and Amazon. On behalf of April, Joe, and Anibal, I'm Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for watching. We will catch you back here on Monday. So long, everybody.
Bear, bear, bear.